welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV, your flagship stations for the Oakland County Megacast. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access on Comcast, Channel 15, and AT&T, Channel 99, as well as on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff. Today on Facebook, via Facebook Live, we are joined by the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, and as always, with me from her home studios in Kegel Harbor is Ronnie Dahl.
Tyler, yesterday, as we were wrapping up the show, the inauguration was underway, and then throughout the afternoon, did you have the chance to be able to watch any of it?
Yes, we did end up airing the remainder of the inauguration ceremony from just after President Joe Biden was officially inaugurated. We had finished our show just shortly after that, maybe 30 seconds to a minute later. And then we joined in progress the broadcast via the Biden Inaugural Committee's YouTube page and their live YouTube broadcast that every other news outlet was feeding into as well, and broadcast through the end of the proceedings when all the dignitaries had left the inaugural platform.
The young poet, 22 years old, yes. She really kind of stole the show yesterday, right? And you were up against people like Lady Gaga.
Right. Yeah, no, it was a jaw-dropping performance by her. She did an amazing job. It was a moving poem. It was creative. It was different. It was inspiring. It kind of wrapped everything up, all the messages from all the previous speakers and performers, into something that was very succinct, but also very powerful as well.
Obviously our country now under a new presidency, the 46th president of the United States, Joe Biden. I watched a documentary last night on Frontline about Biden. I think it had originally aired a couple of days ago, but I have it set. All the Frontline shows air on my, I set it to my DVR to record it. Amazing story, really, it is, because he came from a simple background and he had a stuttering problem. And it really goes to emphasize that in America, you can come from the most humble beginnings and turn your life into greatness. And it's really about how we live our lives. So if anyone has not had the opportunity to check that out, do so. Again, that's Frontline. They air them on PBS, but I do believe they stream them as well. But we are waking up today, a new day, a new presidency. I don't believe, though, Trump is going to go away quietly, Tyler.
No, I don't think yesterday was the last we've seen of the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. There's been some talk that he may try to form a third party. He had some cryptic messaging in his farewell address both a couple days ago and yesterday at Air Force Base Andrews in Maryland, where he had said stuff like the best is yet to come, and we'll see you again soon, and all of that kind of stuff that leads you to believe he's going to continue to be involved in politics, albeit not as president of the United States for now.
But the great news coming out of yesterday, too, not only the ceremony, but I think everyone was kind of holding their breath just a little bit across the country regarding security issues. And we did not have any yesterday. We spoke yesterday morning with the mayor for the city of Lansing. They were anticipating that there could be some threats. Everything was really quiet across the entire country, as well as in D.C., and I think that's a relief for everyone here in the country, because again, like I said, it was like you were holding your breath, just waiting for something to happen yesterday.
Yeah, I think everybody was pretty nervous across the country, waiting for something to happen, if not at the inaugural itself or at all the other festivities of the evening, then at some other place around the U.S., whether it be a protest that goes violent, whether it be a specific attack on a state capitol or on another form of government or on police and National Guard, whatever it may be. I think everybody was a little antsy, and as we got through the day and we got through all the festivities of the inauguration of the 46th president of the United States, that it became clear that something was not going to happen, and the weight on our shoulders was kind of lifted. But now we're in a point afterwards where, as the mayor said yesterday, he had anticipated that the barriers at the state capitol would be coming down a day or so after the inaugural. We do have word today that that those barriers are already in process of being taken down at the state capitol in Lansing, and so we're in that post high security moment that was anticipating and going through the inauguration. But I'd say it's a certainty that federal and state agencies are going to continue to be on high guard for a while, because these problems don't just go away because the inauguration is over.
But on top of that, I will be interested in the conversation regarding the actual ceremony. There was still a lot of pomp and circumstance, although not the crowds that we've seen in the past, and people were all wearing masks and they were socially distanced. However, when you have individuals such as the governor of Michigan, who was there, she was a part of the committee for the inauguration as well. She posted a selfie, but here's my question. And again, this is not political, but just as a general question, does that mean that outdoor concerts should be allowed right now? Because you had people such as Lady Gaga and the country guy, I forget his name, they were singing. They did not have their mask. Other people had a mask. They were socially distanced, but also the performance that was happening last night. A lot of the big performances were, some were via Zoom and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, they were so happening, but yet we're still under very extreme restrictions here in the state of Michigan and several states across the state of Michigan. So does this water down the message of some of our governors that they took part? They traveled when they're telling us not to travel. They went to DC. And we all know that while they were socially distanced there at the actual event, no doubt, just like what's happening at some of our classrooms in our schools across the country, when you have a large amount of people, there are those pinch points, such as going through security. So I'm sure they were in pinch points. And while you may be outside and you may be without a mask, what does that do for the message that you're sending your constituents right now back home, that you're telling them, do not travel? We cannot still have fans in the stands at a Lions game, which is outdoors. So what kind of message does that send? And I think now that the inauguration is over, I'll be interested to see how those are going to be playing out, because I will say, if I was probably like one of those students who had to do a drive-through graduation, I'd be like, hey, why can't they do a drive-through inauguration, right?
I think to some extent, yeah, that those questions are going to be coming up, definitely. And to some extent, they're going to be valid questions. Why are you traveling when you're telling people not to travel? And why? And I think that is a valid question, but I think the concert angle is a little bit far-fetched of a take to have, because that is such a small gathering there. I mean, it's a moderately sized gathering. It's a lot of people from our governments, both federally and from many states across the union. But compared to an outdoor concert, compared to an indoor concert, it's few and far between the number of people attending a concert of that size. Plus, these are relatively short proceedings compared to a full-length concert with multiple acts. And you're in a relatively controlled environment where there are federal agents, there are local agents, that are the agencies that are there monitoring the situation. If somebody is refusing to wear a mask, they're going to be promptly escorted out. Whereas at these larger events where you have hundreds of thousands of people for several hours, people are going to let their guards down. They're going to leave their masks on their chin. They're going to take them off. They're going to disregard altogether. And how many of those people are actually going to be escorted out of the proceedings? So I think to some extent, yeah, there's going to be some questions there. And they're going to have to give some answers to that. I think Governor Whitmer is going to be questioned in the coming days of why should you be able to travel to an event like this out of state, where you're going to be around a lot of people, where you're going to be rubbing elbows with everybody, and there's not really any clear indication of if you wore your mask the entire time that you were there. But I think comparing the inaugural gathering to a concert is a little bit of a hot take.
I think we're going to see that argument come out in some of the lawsuits, and we'll talk in just a minute about one of the latest lawsuits being filed here. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the attorneys kind of use that in some of their arguments as well. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump into the latest headlines. Actually, I was going to leave this one for the last one, but since we were talking about lawsuits, Michigan's bowling alleys are struggling right now. And so they're suing to try to survive the pandemic. So the bowling alley owners across Michigan are sounding the alarm over how much longer their businesses can survive on again, off again pandemic restrictions that ban indoor dining and limit who can bowl. The restrictions set by governor and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services since March are confusing and may result in more bowling alleys going up for sale or out of businesses entirely. And on Tuesday, the Michigan Independent Bowling and Entertainment Centers Association posted a news release on its Facebook page that stated it had hired the Kalman Legal Group to file a lawsuit in federal court on behalf of 5 of its members, alleging the governor, MDHHS, and its director violated both the federal and Michigan constitutions by taking plaintiffs' businesses for public use without just compensation. And keep in mind, they had already filed a lawsuit. I don't know if people remember this, way back in August, but the association actually dropped that lawsuit by the end of the month in hopes that the goodwill move would open up a conversation with the governor. They say that has not happened. Of course, the argument here, Tyler, is going to be about eminent domain. And they're trying to basically say, you're taking control of our business, but you're not giving us compensation for doing so. Interesting argument.
It's definitely an interesting argument because these businesses have been heavily affected by the pandemic. These businesses have been shut down. They've been given certain assurances, and then when those things come to pass, the regulations are extremely confusing. And to bring up and you brought up eminent domain, in that situation, the government's taking property from somebody, but they're getting compensated for it, albeit they're probably not getting entirely the value that they could have gotten in an independent sale, but they're at least getting some semblance of what they are due back to them. And that's an interesting argument being made by these independent bowling groups and by the Michigan Independent Bowling and Entertainment Centers Association in this lawsuit. And I think they made, as you said, they made a goodwill move to try to say, hey, we're in this, we want to be a team player, we want to help the government, help the people of the state of Michigan to get rid of this, because frankly, it's better for business for us to work with you and eradicate this virus in a quick manner than to argue with you and kick the can down the road, which will ultimately just make this go a lot further down the road and a lot longer and further affect our business. But when that's not met with grace from the state, you can understand why these businesses are frustrated and reopening lawsuits and exploring creative avenues in order to get some semblance of a response and compensation for time and business lost.
It really is an interesting conversation, and this also coming on as we approach that February 1st date, in which they have said, the government has basically said here in the state of Michigan, bars and restaurants, which also includes obviously some of the services that the bowling alleys do offer, yes, will be able to open February 1st, but that was kind of a soft date. There was still that threat behind there, and it was like, if the numbers remain low. Well, now the Michigan officials are in fact saying bars and restaurants can resume indoor dining on the 1st, ending nearly the 2-month pause that forced thousands out of work and threatened permanently to shutter thousands of businesses. If you remember, they originally said 3 weeks, and then that got extended. A sustained decrease in new coronavirus cases and positive rates is going to help end the ban on indoor dining, but the state will announce restrictions on services. That's expected to happen on Friday, according to Robert Gordon, who of course is the director for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The news was welcomed by the restaurant industry, whose owners had feared the ban would be extended beyond February 1st, especially because of that new variant of the coronavirus. And because of that, though, keep in mind, this is impacting so many people. Restaurants employed some 447,000 people here in the state of Michigan generated 18 billion in revenue for the state. So this is going to be welcome news because it's a green light. Because we spoke with Doug Young, who was the owner of Fork and Pint in Waterford, and before it was kind of that suggested opening date. Hey, get ready, the possibility could happen. Well, that's hard for these restaurant owners to be able to call back their staff, but also to get the supply chain running when it's a possibility, because they have seen in the past where they anticipated those reopening dates and then a day or two before they said, no, we're going to extend that. So now they are saying, hey, no, look, you have the green light. We're going to allow you to reopen for indoor dining. However, it's not going to be announced until Friday, the restrictions that are going to be placed on these businesses.
Yeah, we've spoken before with John McNamara who's the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. And he had mentioned this before, that these maybe dates are really tough to navigate, because if you do go through the entire process of reopening, getting your food distribution back in, knowing the capacity level so you're only ordering as much food and other supplies as you need so you're not wasting anything and blowing more money than you really need to be spending in order to keep your operations afloat. If you have that maybe date and you prepare all that for then and it does reopen, then you're fine and you're okay and you're at least managing that reopening situation under the constraints. If you don't know the constraints, it makes that much more difficult. And even if you know the maybe date and you know the constraints that will likely be in place, if you then have a situation where it's, well, the numbers aren't quite there yet, we're going to extend this out a little further, that business has spent even more money and it's going straight down the tank straight down the drain because they are not using that in a productive manner. So having this set date, very important for these businesses. Having information tomorrow with a week plus in advance in order to be able to prepare their supply chain, knowing what capacity they need to have, X, Y, and Z materials, how they're going to be able to operate, will be welcome information. It gives them enough time to at least get some semblance of a start on that process and hopefully be ready to go on February 1st in a productive manner. And then it's on the rest of us to continue to take the precautions and take this COVID-19 crisis seriously so we don't put ourselves in a position once again like we saw after the holidays in November where we have another surge in COVID-19 cases and put these businesses back at risk.
Yeah, and we all know that this won't be the last restriction put on some of these businesses due to COVID. And with that, 90% of Michiganders are going to need to get the COVID vaccine to reach herd immunity. That's the new news coming out today. That's because of the new faster moving coronavirus variant. It's now been confirmed here in the state of Michigan. And so because of that, the state is going to be boosting its vaccination goal. The state's lead epidemiologist estimated it's going to take at least 90% of Michiganders 16 years and older to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to effectively beat back the spread of the coronavirus. That is a dramatic increase over the state's previously stated goal of 70% needed to reach that herd immunity from the virus. Reaching 90% though in Michigan appears unlikely because at least for now, and a couple of reasons here, Tyler, COVID vaccines, of course, we all know they remain scarce in much of the state. And even when they are available, there is a large portion of the population of those even eligible that are reluctant to get the vaccine. So what does that mean? We're all going to be in the middle of this pandemic here in the state of Michigan and the United States for quite some time to come. So don't throw your mask out just yet.
Yeah, it's going to be a much longer process trying to get 90% of the population, that extra 20% from what was previously estimated would be needed because of this variant, because of the constraints that come with a more contagious variant being in the state of Michigan, hopefully not spreading too much, but trying to get us out ahead of that as much as possible to limit the spread. And then if we're unable to limit that, get as many people vaccinated as possible so it doesn't become a community spread issue that has led to so many of these surges and shutdowns that we've had throughout this pandemic. It's going to be a lofty goal because you have a certain population of people in the state, like in any other state and throughout the union, that are anti-vaccination altogether. And then on top of that, you have people that are simply just not quite sold on these current COVID vaccines, want to wait a little bit until other people have had them and seen how other people react, if at all, to these vaccines before they decide that they're ready and they feel safe getting them. And then there's those that are just going to be objecting to this altogether because they don't think that there's been enough research behind them or enough time for that research. And so with all of those compounded on top of one another, that extra 20% is no small task to complete, trying to convince another 20% to get the vaccine on top of those within that initial 70% goal that would also have objected to getting the vaccine.
So with that, so many things still to navigate during the middle of this pandemic. We're not coming out of it anytime soon, which means we are going to continue the conversations with so many people deeply impacted by the coronavirus. And up on our show today on this Thursday, we'll be speaking with Gleaners Food Bank as well as Covenant House. I love what they do. It must be so tough for them right now. We'll also be speaking with the owner of the greenhouse of Walled Lake, an interesting marketing plan that he has going on right now during the COVID-19 crisis. Also in the 11 o'clock hour, the spokesperson with the Department of Corrections will be with us. And then we'll also be talking about dermatology, rounding out the show. But first, this quick break here on the Megacast.
Perry tested positive for COVID-19. Emma was exposed to a friend who's positive. Willa's waiting on test results. After any contact with COVID-19, or if you test positive, stay home for at least 10 days. If you live with others, keep your distance and wear a mask. Help Michigan contain COVID-19. Visit michigan.gov/containcovid.
COVID-19 has caused many families to fall behind on finances and on groceries. But you're not alone. You shouldn't have to worry about putting food on the table. MyBridges offers access to quality food and income assistance to help families across the state get the food support they need. It's easy to apply and easy to start shopping. Apply for services at michigan.gov/MIBridges. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Great to have you with us here on the Thursday edition of the Megacast. I can't believe it's already Thursday. I was looking at the calendar going, am I crazy? The days seem to be flying by. And just as a reminder, if you haven't joined us before, you can always find us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Channel 15 if you have Comcast, 99 on AT&T, but you can also tune us in to the radio, 89.3 WBLD, Lakes FM, and 88.1 FM, the BIF. We also want to say thank you today for the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. They are allowing us to live stream today's edition of the Megacast on their Facebook page. So we want to say thank you to them. Our first guest here on the show, such a vital, important part of our community. You know, Gleaners, I don't know if a lot of people know this, Gleaners was actually one of the first food banks in America, and the organization is critical at trying to link available food that is out there and getting it to the people in need in a timely manner. To talk a little bit more about this, let's welcome in Stacy Averill. She's the Vice President of Community Giving and PR. Stacy, great to have you with us here on the Megacast.
Good morning. Yes, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So I guess we should just start off. I know we've had members of your organization on the show before, but if we could start off, give us an overview of where you stand right now versus supply and demand and the need for food.
Sure. So as a food bank, one of the 7 food banks in Michigan, we are facing a lot of challenges this year. You know, as I'm sure you and your viewers and listeners know, you know, food insecurity is something that is in every community and every school district, every city, and we are here to, as you said, you know, link the available food that we know is out there with those who need it most. So we work with a number of partner agencies in the community and distribution sites and different organizations and partners to really be able to identify and help communicate with those who need some support in the form of nutritious food and be able to work with them to get those food items out to those households in need. We are seeing more need than ever right now due to the pandemic. The need was great beforehand, and it's even larger now.
How does that work right now? Because I would think some of the streamlines of your product was coming from some of the restaurants, I believe, as well. I know Panera has been a great partner in providing food for the homeless and organizations such as that. But how does that change how you're operating right now? Because the restaurants are so deeply impacted right now as well.
Right. Yes, absolutely. We do work with restaurants in the area. Our friends at Forgotten Harvest do as well, and they help rescue food from restaurants. And it is, you know, it is harder during these times when restaurants are closed. So not only are restaurants, you know, not necessarily providing as much donated food, but we also see more people in line because they are out of work and used to work at restaurants or be part of businesses that are temporarily or sometimes permanently closed. So the impact is definitely great, and we're seeing people in our lines that have never needed food support before. It's the first time that they are needing this support, and we're grateful for the fact that they're coming to us. We have the food available. We've got our distribution sites set up across all of the 5 counties that we serve. And we want to be that support to help families and households, you know, take hunger off the table, because we all have so many things to worry about and think about right now. And those who are struggling, who are out of work or temporarily out of work, you know, we want households to be able to get back on their feet, to use the resources to pay any household bills or things like that, and not get behind, and come get some, you know, food support from us. We are here to help stabilize households and take some stress off of individuals who right now are just struggling a bit.
Stacy, you're familiar with these numbers, but just for the public out there, Gleaners helps provide food to more than 500 soup kitchens and shelters and food pantries and other organizations throughout the area. 100,000 meals a day are going out to families in need because of your organization. And while that sounds impressive and has to make you feel good at the end of the day, there are also still people out there not getting the need. So with that, how are you shifting what you're doing right now, 10 plus months into the pandemic? Because, you know, the beginning of the pandemic has to be different than what you're doing now long term.
Yes, we when the pandemic first started, our team is anybody I talk to, our team is amazing. The people that I work with are smart and really adapted quite quickly. So we were able to add a number, 66 different distribution sites, in addition to what we do with the 500 and more partner agencies that you had mentioned, added on 66 mobile distribution sites. So we had been doing mobile drive-through distributions before the pandemic. So it was one of those things where we knew that distribution method worked. And because of social distancing standards and wanting to keep everybody as safe as possible, we were able to take that model and adapt it and grow, you know, our distributions using that model. So that's something that we did at the beginning of the pandemic. Well, now we're doing more of those mobiles. We're adding more, and we're adding them long term. And so, you know, we're really able to leverage, partnerships have been the key word for me this past year. Not only is it partners that are in the community and distribution sites and people who are willing to help us, use a parking lot or connect with their community members, but it's also government partnerships, being able to work with the government to get food support and dollar support from the government for these food distributions. And then, it's donors and funders and other people in the community who really want to help us help the community, all coming together for these things. And so right now we're adding on another 20 distribution sites in the next couple of months, mobile sites, as again, focused on getting healthy food to families with children. We know that a number of families in our community, so 300,000 kids in Southeast Michigan, rely on free or reduced meals when they're in school. Well, right now school is hybrid, or some in person, some are just completely virtual, and so that balance has been hard for families who rely on those meals from school to be able to make up for them at home. And so, so we're really out there making sure that we're working with school districts and other school partners to provide these distributions to those families in their districts so that they've got the resources they need to get through this.
Yeah, and if we could talk, the schools are doing a great job at trying to help.
Oh, yeah.
Doing big launches. But I can say, as someone, I did a homeless retreat on the streets of Detroit. And so we went to so many of these different pantries. There's a difference between peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and nutritious food as well. Can you talk about what you're doing to try to make sure that the food that you're getting to the people in need is also nutritious?
Absolutely. Yes. We have nutrition standards, and we in the 30 to 35 pounds of food that families get from our distributions, we make sure it's a well-balanced amount of food, and it's groceries. So to your point, it's not, though, any type of food support is helpful, and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is going to take hunger off of your plate for that meal. And that's wonderful. And we all have to, all the pieces coming together are what's going to make it work for households. What we like about the groceries is that it gives households the ability to be flexible and use the food when they need it, stretch the dollars that they have, because a number of households have resources. And so being able to use some of those resources to supplement what we then provide helps them stretch their budgets and stretch their food further. And so, we've got, lean proteins and whole grains and dairy and vegetables and fruits and a lot of fresh produce, as well as fresh milk. All of those different types of things are essential to a proper, well-balanced nutrition. And we're able to do that through these mobile distributions because we're able to provide groceries. And we've found that being able to provide groceries really does give households more flexibility and more choice in what they're able to consume.
Stacy Averill with us here on the Megacast. She's the Vice President of Community Giving and PR for Gleaners Food Bank. One thing I do think the vaccination is highlighting for everyone in America, it's the logistics involved behind the scenes to being able to get the product out to the public and the people who need it the most. And while you're not delivering the vaccine, you are delivering food. I know that Gleaners recently purchased a new property in, I believe, Taylor downriver,
Yep.
a distribution site. Can you fill us in about that and why it was needed?
Sure. So as we had talked about, before the pandemic, the need was great, and we were distributing between 3.5 and 4 million pounds a month to the community. Since the pandemic, we're averaging 7 million pounds a month. So, so on an annual basis, it was about 46 million pounds a year. Last year, it was up to just under 65 million pounds a year. And right now, if we continue at that rate, we're on a rate to hit 80 million pounds in a year. And our distribution facilities, our warehouses and our facilities were just getting to the point where we were at max capacity. And so a building in Taylor was came up available in last year, and it really is it's going to help us have greater efficiencies and enable us to be able to receive more donated food and have the efficient logistics that it takes to do all of this. Working with more than 500 partner agencies, having probably like, what are we at now? Probably between 150 and 200 mobile distribution sites on top of those 500 partners. I mean, there's a lot of work that's going on and a lot of distributions that are going out. And so this building is really going to help us increase the amount of, the amount of work we're doing in the community and get some greater efficiencies out of it as well.
Stacy, I know that Gleaners has been in operation since like back in the 70s. So you have a long history, but we've also never gone through a pandemic in that time as well. How do you plan for the next 6 months, not knowing what the next 6 months will bring? Because you couldn't plan for the pandemic.
Right. Yep. It is hard. It is hard, but we do know that in the next 6 months, as the community starts to, get their feet back underneath them, as the vaccine starts to, be distributed and people are taking it, there's still going to be need. It's going to take a while for everybody for the economy to get back up, for our businesses to get back going and stay open. So all of that's going to take some time. And so we know that the community is going to still need some support for quite a while. And we see that happening through the next 6 months and potentially into the next year, as things, quote unquote, get back to some sort of normalcy. So, it is our intention to continue with the distributions that we have, continue with the number of sites that we have for as long as we can, as we see the need is there. We have the ability to take a look at, what's going on in the community and increase or decrease our distributions based on what we're seeing in terms of needs. So, and we've already done that a number of times since the start of the pandemic. So we'll plan to continue to do that. And really, we just want to be a consistent resource that people, next week or 4 or 5 months from now can continue to rely on us if that's what they need.
You really are a blessing to so many people in the community. And I do hope and think that one thing that has come out of this is the need and for people to say it's okay. It's okay to ask for help, because in the beginning there was a lot of pride. There was a lot of pride, but I think by having so many people directly impacted by the virus and the effects of the virus, it's okay to ask for help, and let's hope that comes out. But with that, just a couple more minutes before we let you go, fundraising, where do you stand with fundraising and volunteers as well?
Yep. So the community has done a wonderful job of standing alongside us in terms of fundraising, and we are able to do the distributions that we're doing and able to ramp up because of that. And so we hope that continues so that we can continue to provide these distributions at this level for the months to come. So, we can't thank our donors enough for standing by us and trusting us in this and really enabling this work that we're doing. And volunteers, we do still need volunteers. We've reduced our volunteer shifts quite a bit. For obvious reasons in terms of social distancing and keeping everybody safe. But we do have some volunteer opportunities that still can happen. They're all socially distanced. All the safety protocols are still in place. And those activities are just easier to do within the restraints of the guidelines that we are all following. And so anybody who's interested in volunteering can take a look at our website, gcfb.org. There's opportunity to volunteer there. There's opportunity to give. We're also, we have a new virtual food drive. So I know there's a lot of companies and organizations who are wondering what they can do to help or if they can help. And we've got this great virtual food drive platform that organizations can sign up for, work with our team to set it up. We can do fun competitions with it or just really collect donations, but it's an opportunity to feel like you're doing a physical drive within our platform and virtually. So all wonderful ways to get involved and to give back and to support the community and help us, like I said, continue these distributions for as long as they're needed.
I think that's a great idea with the virtual food drives, because I know that in offices I've worked at in the past, they would put the big box out and everyone would bring things in. People aren't going into the office right now. So it's all about creativity, right?
Yeah, we were excited. We actually had planned a relaunch of that last year, and it just was perfect timing. So it's a great tool. You can go in there and kind of shop, and you can pick the items that you want and put them in your cart. So yeah, we love that. We were excited to launch it. Yeah.
Well, Stacy, we want to say thank you for your time, but also, extend our gratitude to the members of your team as well, because so many people are in need of your services right now, and it's okay to ask for help. So thank you for everything that you're doing. I know probably the last 10 months have been pretty stressful on top of what you do as well. So we wish you the best in 2021, though.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I will let the team know. Thanks so much.
Stacy Averill with us. She's the Vice President of Community Giving and over at Gleaners Food Bank. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. Still a lot to get to here in the show. Next up, we are going to be speaking with the Executive Director for another nonprofit that is in desperate need of help, the Covenant House of Michigan. This is the Megacast.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19. To make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi. My name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Thank you for taking time out of your Thursday to be with us here on the Megacast. For those that may be tuning in for the first time, just to let you know that this show originated out of the beginning of the crisis way back this past March. Dave Scott and Tyler Keefe came up with this idea and this platform to be able to keep the public informed in a long form interview format about all of the things that are going on in the COVID-19 crisis. Think back way back to March. We thought this was going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month. We're now more than 10 months into it, but the information continues to change and the need continues to change as well. So we appreciate if you do take a little bit of time to check out some of the interviews that we've been able to have with so many great people throughout the state of Michigan and here in Oakland County and beyond regarding the COVID-19 crisis. And with that, our next guest for the past 10 months, we've been told stay at home to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. But What if you don't have a home? What if you're alone living on the streets? For so many people, our youth that are at risk, well, for some of them, they've been able to be lucky enough to find a home and hope at Covenant House. It's a Michigan faith-based nonprofit. And with us today here on the Megacast to talk a little bit more is Gerry Piro. He's the executive director for the Covenant House. We're honored to have you with us here on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you.
I was able to go onto your website a little bit earlier today, and I saw your message to the people. The need is great, but before we get into that, for those that aren't familiar with your organization, can you give us some background on what you do?
Sure. So Covenant House, we are one of 17 locations in the United States. And internationally, it began in 1971, somewhere around there. And what we do is we work with 18 to 24-year-olds who, for one reason or another, have become homeless. And so we pretty much stay with that particular age group, and we work as much as we can to get them back on track. So we provide shelter. We have a capacity of 45 here in the Detroit location. We also have another shelter out in Grand Rapids also. That's our second one that we have there, and we have a capacity there of 28. But here in Detroit, we have 45 that would be living in our emergency shelter right in from the streets. And then we also have a longer term shelter called the Transitional Living Program. And that one has a capacity of 20 that live in there. So right now, because of the pandemic, the city has reduced our capacity from 45 to 30, basically because we have 3 in a bedroom, and they feel that that is too much where you cannot sleep head to toe. So it's just a precaution in terms of making sure that everybody is kept safe here. So what we do also, besides food and clothing, we also try and address their emotional needs, their mental health needs. We also try and address the issues of getting them IDs, getting them into Medicare rather. And we also work with, again, probably the most difficult issue is their mental health. So we have social workers, we have people that work with the state in order to get them their state IDs, because without that, they are not really eligible to get any of the help that they deserve. We also have a workforce development department here, and that is really very important because nothing will turn around for these young people unless they become job ready. So we have classes that go on every day where they must attend if they are not working or not in school. And through those classes and through those seminars, we try and help them understand what the world of work is about, what the expectations would be once they get a job, how to maintain that job. And we then connect with the employer to be sure that if anything is going wrong, we're among the first to hear it and try to correct it. So everyone that comes here can stay for up to 3 months. I would say that pretty much everything turns over in 3 to 4 weeks, and hopefully we can do everything that we can to get them back on their feet and to successfully reintegrate into the society here. So that's kind of a long answer.
No, and I will say, Gerry, I've had the pleasure of being able to do a ride along. I don't remember if I was at Channel 7 or Fox 2 back in the day with one of your volunteers. And I don't think people understand the impact that your organization has on the lives of some of the individuals that you're able to reach, because you guys are really the superheroes for so many of these people, and the need is great. And a lot of people may not understand that some of these kids are coming from the foster home family or the foster system, in that once they reach a certain point, the foster family no longer receives benefits from the state of Michigan. So they're basically kicked out. And then they find themselves on the streets. And then, living in abandoned homes. And when you're on the streets, you have no one. Your life can seem hopeless. You're giving them the direction and changing their lives, but also you hold them accountable at the same time.
Yes. I want to respond to a couple of things that you talked about. Most of the youth that end up in Covenant House usually end up here because their families have fallen apart. And as you also mentioned, they are aging out of foster care. And when they leave foster care, there really are a lot of benefits that they can access, but they don't know how. And that's probably the one thing that we do immediately when they come here, is to make sure that they receive all the benefits that they are entitled to from being in the foster care system. So being in foster care, there are a lot of good people that are trying to help and keep everybody and keep these young people safe. And then there are those who are basically, it's just a job and they live by that. You also mentioned about our outreach program. That is critical to what we do. And the person that you met who runs our outreach program for over 20 years is Stephanie Taylor. And she is like an angel on the streets. Nothing stops that woman from ministering and working with these young people that are on the street. We have 2 teams that go out twice a day, and they drive around to those areas where these young people tend to hang out or congregate and get together, and offer them as much as possible, trying to convince them that they can really turn their lives around or do better coming into Covenant House. And sometimes they do come right into the van and come back with her, but many times she leaves them with our card that lists everything that we can do for them, all the services that we can provide, and it has the phone number that they can call, and we can go back out and pick them up again. So that is a very critical piece of who we are and what we do, the outreach program. If I may elaborate a bit more on that, across the street from Covenant House here in Detroit, we're on Martin Luther King Boulevard and I-96, is the Salvation Army. And we have partnered with them in a very important way. First Friday of every month, they have a program called Encore that we've created with them. And we go out with them at night on those first Fridays with their bread and bed truck and with our outreach team. And so our outreach team is very familiar where these young people are hanging out. And so we lead them to those locations. And it has been tremendously successful. And it's being supported by the Ford company. And for an example, many of these young people live and sleep and stay behind the Rosa Parks Transit Center. When the pandemic came by, they were no longer allowed to sit or sleep on the inside of the transit center. So they are sleeping outside behind the transit center. And last Friday, when our team showed up, they came running out from behind to get food, to get some comfort, and to possibly be able to go back with us to the shelter. And that is happening in several places where these young people hang out. Under the Ayer viaducts, under the overpasses, in trailer parks, any place where they can find some cover. And we find them out and we go back to make sure they're still okay if they do not want to come in. We work with families that have children as well. And it breaks your heart to see the situation that some of them are living in. They were telling me the last week when they went to Rosa Parks, there were older people there, also older homeless people, and this one man was eating out of the garbage pail. And that really, really is nothing like that should be happening that we can try and correct. So that's another piece of what we do, going right out onto the streets and making sure that we can do as much as possible to end the homelessness there.
And the beautiful thing about what Covenant House does, it's not just about giving them shelter, but it's also about lifting them up so they can sustain life on their own. Can you tell us more about some of the programs that you're offering? Because I do wonder how the pandemic is impacting some of the jobs that some of the individuals have been able to get, because you would think a lot of them are kind of more those low income jobs, such as at restaurants and bars, and they're being so deeply impacted right now because of the virus. Is that spilling over into some of your people that you're trying to help as well?
Yes. So as I mentioned, an important piece here is the workforce development program. And that's where we try and do as much training as possible so that they know how to dress for the job, how to get to the job, which is a very big piece here because they're going to be taking the bus. Some of them take 2 hours to get to their position, to get to their job, and they persevere. So we also have addiction services here in what we call our House of Hope. And we try and work with these young people, again, to come off of their addiction and become a bit more responsible in who they are and what they do and how they do it. So we also make sure that they are healthy. We have a nurse practitioner on site that is here for them for a lot of testing. Even now with the pandemic, everything has really been turned upside down. And we have to try and do our best to keep them on campus as opposed to going out and hanging out with their friends or in dangerous places where they might easily contract the virus. So we have had to do what a lot of other organizations have had to do, is put in a lot more protocols, put in a lot more cleaning and the way that we do dinner and all of that. So it has all changed all around. So now we test all of our staff and our residents every other week to be sure that we're not going to be spreading that virus within the shelter. So all of those things are critical in making sure that they are safe, making sure that they can survive, making sure that they can thrive, and that they're ready to meet the world. It's really a joy when we see some of these young people do so well, who are able to manage their lives, who are able to go to work on a regular basis, who are able to save what they're making at that job and preparing to go into their own home. So that's the end game here at Covenant House, preparing them to go into their own home. So there are several ways that can happen, but through government vouchers, we have what's called the rapid rehousing, which pays for their rent for a certain period of time. And in our longer term shelter, that is what that is all about, that they are preparing to go out into their own home and hopefully be successful in maintaining that home and knowing about budgeting and in being able to maintain the job. Another program that we recently initiated is a mentoring program. That is becoming very, very important, where we match up someone who is really serious about preparing to go out into their own and back into society, into their own home. We match them up with a responsible adult or a married couple. And they basically mentor that young person. They create a relationship, they provide advice, they socialize together all over a period of time so that these young people have someone that they can, in a way, call their own, someone that they could go to, someone that they can trust. And beyond all of the staff that are here. And that has really been very helpful to a number of our young people here that have gotten into housing. We actually have a young man on site who came here as a homeless youth, and he was really very determined to make his life better. And he started working in our maintenance area. And he was doing so well, we offered him a part-time job, which then became a full-time job with benefits. And he really is a great example of what can happen when We work with these young people, tell them what's waiting out there for them, how they can get there. We also have 4 charter schools that are specifically geared towards homeless youth to come and get a full diploma sanctioned by the state of Michigan. So we have 1 on our campus, we have 2 more in Detroit, and we have another school on our Grand Rapids campus. And they have been extremely successful in helping those young people get their full high school diploma. So there are several things that we do in many, many ways to try and help these young people whose life is ahead of them to make sure that they make the best of it. We don't want the city of Detroit or the state of Michigan to lose these young people who can be extremely helpful in communities and become an important part of their community. It's what we try to do every day.
And Gerry, you and members of your team, you really are angels outside of the pandemic as well. And I know that your organization is about, 90% privately funded. To be able to continue these resources and to lift up and give hope and a future to so many of these kids, how is fundraising and what do you need from the public right now?
Well, fundraising is critical to who we are and what we do. So as you mentioned, we are about 90% privately funded by our donors. And we love our donors, obviously, and we pray for them because they have blessed us. But we still need more because government grants will not cover all that we do. We have a 5.5-acre campus with 7 buildings that are constantly requiring maintenance, as well as the work that we do with these young people and staff. So fundraising is just key for all of us. And we just never stop. We have to keep going. And we do the best that we can.
So you're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Sorry, Gerry, we just have to get the station ID out there for you. Gerry, before we let you go, I know you're in the middle of a new campaign right now. How can members of the public help you?
So we're getting ready to, again, launch a campaign, a fundraising campaign. This is kind of the most difficult part of the year because Christmas giving is over and we really haven't made our way into the spring. We had to eliminate 2 special events that we do that were very popular. So I would say go to our website, covenanthousemI.org, and there are several ways to support us. And possibly if someone wants to volunteer, that would also be the portal to go to, covenanthousemI.org. And whatever they can spare, whatever they can support us with, we gratefully will receive. And it will keep us going. It will help us make sure that these young people have the chance that they deserve, have the emotional background, which is what the pandemic has taken away from them. We are the ones they run to. They don't have family, and we're there to reassure them to make sure that they're going to be successful.
Well, you are truly changing lives, and your dedication and your commitment to so many of these youth, it's appreciated, and we all need to get behind what you're doing. So thank you for your time, and we're hoping that this will give a little bit more awareness to the efforts that you're making. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, I could continue this conversation for so much longer, but we're out of time now. But again, Covenant House of Michigan, if you have it in your heart, either volunteer or donate. Even a few dollars helps in their mission. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. Still a lot to get to in the second hour. Next up, we'll be changing up the conversation just a little bit. The Greenhouse of Walled Lake will be with us when the show continues.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
The only way to beat COVID-19 is to face it.
You can't get too comfortable.
You can't forget the danger.
Wear the mask.
Wear the mask.
Wear the mask. Wash your hands.
Keep a safe distance.
Especially in the next few months.
You know we'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
Someday.
But not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But not yet.
But not yet.
Consider virtual gatherings for the holidays.
Curbside food orders.
Grocery delivery.
And shopping local.
Shop local.
And especially shopping local.
Let's beat this virus. We can if we face it together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
For the latest information, visit oakgov.com/COVID.
We want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to join us here on the Megacast. Just as a reminder, you can always catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. If you have a cable, thank you so much. A portion of your bill goes to help support programming such as this. You can tune us into Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T, and you can also listen to us on the radio, 89.3 WBLD on Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH in Bloomfield Hills. And then today we are also lucky enough to be live streaming today's edition of the Megacast on the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page. So we want to say thank you to them. And of course, all of those platforms is which makes up the Megacast. And the goal here is to be able to bring you long-form interviews as we all continue to try to navigate the COVID-19 crisis. And according to a new report out today, an estimated 90% of Michiganders will need to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to reach herd immunity, which basically means we're going to be in the middle of this pandemic for quite some time longer. But a lot of people are still hesitant to roll up their sleeves. But to help raise awareness of the importance of the vaccine, the Greenhouse of Walled Lake is promoting Pot for Shots. Yes, you heard that, Pot for Shots. With us now on the Megacast is Gerry Millen. He is the owner of Greenhouse of Walled Lake, the first fully licensed recreational dispensary and medical marijuana center here in Oakland County. Gerry, thank you for being with us.
Hey, Ronnie, how are you? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I will say you're like the marketing king.
Well, you know, the thing is, Ronnie, is cannabis is still federally illegal, but they'll take our tax dollars, which makes no sense, but I guess it does because it's a government. But we can't even advertise, really. I'm allowed to buy billboards and I can do some print advertising, and that's pretty much about it. So you really have to think out of the box. And my background, you know, from television media, working at Channel 50 and 62 years ago to E! and Extra and all the media stuff I've done has taught me you have to think out of the box. And it's knock on wood, it's worked so far.
So you were kind of before my time in the local Detroit market, but you were a sports guy.
Yeah, I'm sports director for UPN 50 and CBS 62. I worked with Rich Fisher and Amir Jacobson for about 8 years. And then I went out to Los Angeles and worked for the E! Network, E! News Live. And then I worked for Extra out of New York. And then I went to Japan and I started in the mixed martial arts fight game. I was vice president of a Japanese company of fighting. And then I got into cannabis.
That's quite the background, but now you're doing weed.
Right.
The nickname for Walled Lake is Weed Lake. But with that, what made you make this switch? How did you even think about getting into this?
I was working in Japan for 10 years, commuting. I've been to Tokyo about 200 times, and I had young children, and my family's my number one priority. So I'm like, I got sick of watching my children grow up on FaceTime. So I was looking for a new opportunity business-wise, and I thought, and my friends are in cannabis in Colorado and California, and I thought, you know what, this might be a good business venture. And honestly, after getting into it, learning the plant, and starting to go to these Compassion Club meetings, I met a lot of senior citizens. I met a lot of parents of small children that were autistic or would have seizures, and it convinced me, because at first, meeting I thought I was going to go to, I was going to be the oldest guy there and it'd be a bunch of stoners eating Doritos. And it was completely opposite. I was the youngest and no one would talk to me for about 4 meetings. And I finally went up to an elderly lady and said, no one will talk to me. She's like, oh, honey, we thought you were the cops. So they thought that I was undercover. They thought I was an undercover cop. And then they finally started talking to me. And I now, after 16 years trying to get this legalized, there is a lot of medical uses for cannabis. Whether you like it, don't like it, grew up during DARE times like me, doesn't matter. If your loved one is sick or dying or they're having seizures and you're out of options, cannabis is a cure for a lot of things.
So, Gerry, I will say that you're talking to someone with ATF. I went to work for ATF. I had to have a top security clearance.
Right.
So I'm probably one of the few people you might meet in your life. I've never smoked pot.
Really? Have you eaten it? Have you eaten it?
I've never eaten it that I know of. I will say
Right.
I've never eaten it. I've never smoked pot, but we did have Anquinette Jameson, who is a former coworker of mine, and I think she is a great advocate for the other side to help remove the stigmatism that is associated with weed and to continue the conversation in households about the benefits of weed as well.
Yes. Yeah. And, Anquinette is a great spokesperson. She's actually on the board of directors with me on the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. And obviously she's from Fox 2. So she's a great spokesperson with all of her television background and she's actually uses it as a patient. But no, I love her. She's awesome.
So I know that I do remember, I thought it was brilliant. I think it was last year with the Mother's Day promotion that you did. I was like, oh, that's great. Wine, pot, and chocolate. What can go wrong, right? But with that, now you're doing pot for shots. So tell us about this latest marketing campaign you have going.
Well, we did a Popeye's chicken sandwich giveaway about 1.5 years ago when people were like actually killing each other in parking lots for chicken sandwiches. And that was incredible. Like we had a line down the street, Channel 7 sent the helicopter. I didn't think we could top it. And, not to advocate or denounce the vaccine because, as a business owner, you have to stay neutral. And I'm all about freedom of choice. You want that vaccine, get it. If you don't get it. But I thought, you know what? I teamed up with a company called U-Baked out of Burton, Michigan. They're one of the top growers and producers here in the state. And they gave me as many pre-rolls as we can give out. So I thought, why not reward people for getting the shot? Why not? They don't have to make a purchase. And it blew up. I was getting calls from Russia, Brazil, New Zealand, New York Daily News did a story on it, CNN. I'm shocked on how many outlets picked this one up. I'm glad, don't get me wrong, but I'm shocked.
But I will say, it's like right now, the vaccine is not available to the general public. So most of the people that are getting the vaccine right now, they may work in an industry that does not allow for them to smoke pot. So we have to remember that,
right.
So there's that balance, right?
Right. So here's the thing. So Oakland County put out a thing on the website. You can sign up. And, we may go past the 30 days. Maybe we'll go 60, maybe we'll go 90. And I'll say this about frontline workers in cannabis. This is what infuriates me. You could be a frontline worker, a doctor. You can go out and take any opiate you want, prescribed or not prescribed. You can drink a gallon of Jack Daniels in your car before you go into work. And if they don't catch you, it's okay. Cannabis is legal. I think you'll see it change over the many years to come. We have a lot of law enforcement, doctors, lawyers, a lot of professionals use cannabis. I mean, a lot. They come in here and they use it. And I mean, you're right. I mean, maybe they're getting tested for it, but you would be surprised on who uses cannabis. You would be shocked by how many people and who they are.
Oh, well, it's very actually, going forward, I think that once the federal government lifts the mandate, if they ever get to that point, you're going to see a big shift in how this actually is. But I will tell you, even when I worked for ATF, I remember my sister's dog, we were trying to get CBD for the dog because of the seizures. But I was like, I can't even touch it because CBD can have traces of, right. And so we've had agents that had a random test, but they were like, hey, it was CBD, but you don't know what's in it. So that's how scary the world is. Like, can you imagine, like, I lost my job because I was feeding CBD to my dog, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that's what you're still up against.
Yeah, the rules are draconian. I mean, honestly, it's a plant. It's like anything else. Anything in excess is not good for you. But the problem is it's been illegal for so long that all the studies on cannabis has only been to show any negative side effects, not the positive. I believe it was 3%. I read last from Sanjay Gupta that 3% of the studies in cannabis are to show the positive effects. The rest are, to show the negative. But you know as well as I do, our government loves money, and you will see it legalized. I say probably the next 4 to 6 years, it will be legalized. And what we're seeing here is a lot of people are coming in recreationally to try cannabis because they're afraid to get their card that might need it medically for sleep, anxiety, stress. I mean, the senior citizens that come into our store at the Greenhouse of Walled Lake is astounding. My average customer is 42 years old here. Because we pride ourselves at the Greenhouse of having a very knowledgeable staff, and we stay in touch with our patients. We encourage them to keep logs on, did this work? How did this affect you? How didn't this affect you? And for pain management, sleep, stress, seizures, I mean, the list goes on. And it's like anything else. You have to try a couple things to see what works. It's not, it's very rarely do we get a lot of people who just want to get stoned out of their minds. That's not the kind of clientele that we cater to at the Greenhouse at all. I mean, they're welcome to come here and buy products, but we pride ourselves on, number one, being here for patients, and secondly, people that are kind of curious.
Gerry Millen with us here on the Megacast. He's the owner for the Greenhouse of Walled Lake. With that, Gerry, talk a little bit more, if you can, about some of the products and some of the things that you do offer there in Walled Lake.
Hey, grab me a couple things of candy bars and fudge and stuff. Wait, I'm just telling one of my guys to grab me some.
Oh wait, you have chocolate?
Oh yeah, listen, Ronnie, we have everything. We have a friend of mine actually bought the rights to Mackinac Island fudge, and now you can buy Mackinac Island fudge that is medicated. We have some of the most delicious chocolate. We have a candy bar called Super Baked, and it's like Superman ice cream. It looks like the Superman ice cream, tastes just like it. It is delicious. We have gummies. We have suckers. We have, pre-rolls, flour. We have transdermal patches that you can see. A lot of seniors will wear them on the inside of their hands. But no, here you go. There's the fudge right there. There's the fudge. So
wow.
It's like Mackinac Island fudge. They have some delicious chocolate bars, and it doesn't taste like weed. It tastes like chocolate. And everything is tested. It's also dosed properly in 10 milligram pieces so that you can say, okay, you can only start with 5 milligrams, especially with edibles. Take it slow. And if 5 doesn't get you there, you take 10. We're very cautious on people when they come in. We tell them, take this very seriously. You don't want to drive a car after eating an edible because it takes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half to take effect. We're very responsible here because I want to make sure that we make cannabis for the masses and we put a good face on it. And it's a personal choice. I grew up during DARE, and I feel I was brainwashed on cannabis. And I think there's a lot more. If you really study up the history of cannabis, you'll understand why it's illegal. It's a lot of control. Hemp was illegal. Come on, hemp's illegal. Why? Because of paper. It competed with paper. Now hemp is legal, and I think you're seeing a lot of those things change. But over the next 4 to 6 years, you're going to see cannabis legal in America. And I want it to be a slow rollout.
We've had, I know in speaking with Antoinette, with Q, talking about some of the issues with the banking due to the federal rules and the restrictions as well. And I can tell you from my time with ATF, there were a lot of issues with these federal and local task force, because on a local side, it's allowed, but on the federal side, it still isn't. So this issue is not going away anytime soon, but there is an education process with that as well. But
we have banking. There is banking available. Like we have banking. We pay enormous fees. I mean, if you knew the fees it cost me to have a bank, it's ridiculous. But we do have banking, 100%.
But I know that as well, because it's about removing the stigma that's attached with weed. And that's going to take a long time because it took a long time to get it there too. And now you have to kind of unwind it per se.
Yes, you do. And we're unwinding the stigma of weed every day. I mean, it's amazing. I'll give you an example. We gave a private class because we do a lot of education. Until when COVID hit, we had to stop a lot of it outside of the building. We'd go to senior homes and we'd give seminars on THC and CBD. A couple of weeks ago, I gave a little seminar in my office to 10 school teachers that reached out to me because they wanted to learn more about it. They're all middle-aged school teachers. And they're like, look, people think that we're holy rollers because we're school teachers. We're normal people. So we want to try cannabis. Can we come in and learn some stuff? And we taught them. And actually, a couple of the teachers want to come and work as bud tenders on the weekends, actually. So the stigma's unwinding. And that's where I feel like I kind of come in because I really want to educate seniors. I want women to get involved because, women are empowering and women You know, they get together, instead of wine Wednesday, I want weed Wednesday. You know, there's alternatives, and you don't have to smoke weed. You can use a chocolate bar. There's a gummy. There's a tincture. You name the product. Drinks are starting to come on the market. You know, there's so many different products to try. They're coming out with wine that they're removing the alcohol content, and they're replacing the wine alcohol content with cannabis. So it tastes like wine that has a cannabis effect to it. So
that
it's
is
crazy.
That is fascinating in
Ah,
itself.
see, they tried
with that, yeah, right. But with that, Gerry, I do have to say before I let you go, I have to touch on the things that are going on in Walled Lake, because I read the Deadline Detroit article.
Yes. Yes.
What the heck? Are you just suing everyone? And how many PPOs do you have on for people out there? Come on.
It's not about suing anyone. This cannabis industry brings out a lot of nefarious characters that just want money. And I've had some people stalk me. And the individual that stalked me is now, his house was just raided. All of his electronics were taken. He's charged in Livingston County. He's also got a charge in Oakland. So sometimes you have to bring charges against people to stop their crazy behavior. Because, you know, they threatened to rob the place. They put pictures of my house on the internet, my address, and it's the people that did not get a license in Walled Lake. Because there's a lot of money involved in this industry. I'm not going to lie. It's a very, it's a growing industry, let's say. And some people that nefarious characters that want to be in couldn't get in. So they attacked me and my family for 10 months. I couldn't get law enforcement to do anything. Facebook is disgusting. Facebook won't take threats down. They won't take anything down, I guess, unless you're President Trump. But my family was threatened. I was threatened. Facebook sucks. I hate Facebook. They would not take it down until his house was raided. They finally took it down after 10 months. So it's not me suing people, Ronnie. It's people threatening my life.
So with that, though, I will say, if they're threatening you, look, you were a member of the media, but you were lucky enough to be a member of the media before social media.
Oh,
because
thank God.
If I took offense with everyone that wrote anything negative about me, my life would be consumed right now.
Oh, Ronnie, listen, I have no problem with negative comments. Being in the media even before that, you know what it's like when you're in a public eye, they attack you. But when you are attacking me personally, when I'm not in public eye anymore, and you're attacking, they put pictures of my children on the internet. That's way over the line. They're telling people rob the place. It's full of cash. The safe's in the basement. That's way out of line. Way out of line. And our internet laws have not caught up. It's going to take somebody to die. And, I think Facebook and Twitter and all these social media platforms, they should be held accountable, because they're not held accountable for anything. I could say I'm going to kill Ronnie Dahl on Facebook. They wouldn't take it down, and then come kill you. And guess what? Facebook's not liable. That's ridiculous. So it's going to take somebody probably to die. And the only way I could get it to stop was to file a couple of lawsuits. And guess what? It's pretty amazing when you file some lawsuits and you hit somebody in the pocketbook, they stop. And when they get raided and they get charged.
But with that, though, can I ask?
Yeah.
What is this? Because some people are saying this is also about corruption in Walled Lake. There is a Facebook page out there, I think I've seen a couple times too. What is your relationship with the city manager, Dennis Witt? Do you have a relationship with him outside being a business person?
No, other than being a business owner. I was just appointed to the DDA. And I think any business, whether it's cannabis or if I own the Dairy Queen, you have to have a relationship with your city that you're trying to help rebuild. I'm trying to help rebuild Walled Lake. Do I work with the city? Absolutely. Did I donate $10,000 to needy families at Christmas? I did. Did I give $5,000 of turkeys to Walled Lake? I did. Do I work on the trunk or treat? Absolutely. You have to be partners with the city. The corruption part is a joke. It's sour grapes from people that did not get a license here. I was sued by a group of individuals that didn't get a license here, and they sued the city for corruption. It was dismissed. Zero proof. The problem is, as well as I do, if you tell somebody the sky's purple enough, they're going to believe it's purple if they're that type of people. So nothing's ever been proved. The case was dismissed. I was sued frivolously. It cost me $30,000 to defend a frivolous suit. If anybody has any corruption, bring it forward. They've been saying it for 2 years. But here's what happens, Ronnie. Look at a city like Berkeley. Whenever a city opts in for cannabis, they got 18 applications, I believe, in Berkeley. They gave 2 licenses. Guess what they got after that? 16 lawsuits. Corruption. It was handled wrong. So what did Berkeley do? Berkeley was smart. The mayor and the city council said, you know what? No licenses. You guys want to sue? If you don't get a license, we're pulling the plug. Greedy people are behind all these lawsuits, all this corruption. And when you're on top, you take all the arrows. I've been in the media. You know what being in the media is like. I can take every arrow and every bullet they throw at me. But if you mess with my family, you got a huge problem.
Yeah, and I will say, just to let you know, I voted for medical marijuana, but I also live in Keiko Harbor, and I voted against allowing for, recreational marijuana to come in, because we're such a small community. On top of that, I don't even know if you'd be able to find a location that wasn't within the distance requirements of a church or a school, because there are a lot of requirements, and Anquinette was explaining.
The only requirements are for schools, 1,000 feet. Churches do not apply. Only schools, cursory K through 12. It's all.
She was also
they left
talking
it
about
all
the security backgrounds that you all go through to even be able to get a license.
It took them 8 months to license me. 8 months. I am the cleanest person you will find in cannabis. I can guarantee you that. Maybe me and you, I should say.
Yeah, but with that, I will say there seems to be in a city of just over 7,000.
7,000.
Wall Lake seems to be kind of taking an arrow when it comes to the issue of cannabis, because I do know there are some situations in which the FBI has been involved in investigating some of the companies and some of the licenses and the rules and regulations behind, but we won't get into all of that. But I think you're a marketing genius and the ways that you've been trying to get your message out about.
And Ronnie, as well as I do, with that, when you put yourself out there like that, people are going to attack you. It's just the nature of the beast. So I fully expect it. I'm trying to go to some other cities right now. This is all about education. And to me, it wouldn't be a bad place in Keego. There's, Phil Troes in Keego Harbor, the heating and cooling company, Mr. Troes, he would love to turn that into a cannabis facility.
I'm going to tell you that's 2 blocks from me, and I'm going to say no, because I've also seen the lines outside some of these places, and go to Pontiac.
Well, that's just bad planning.
That's where they're fighting.
Ronnie, you
they
can't
have
say
a lot
that.
Of
But Ronnie, put yourself in the position of, let's say your mother is dying, God forbid, of cancer, and she needs cancer medicine. Why does she have to go to Pontiac? I mean,
why can't I go to CVS or Rite Aid?
Because the federal government won't allow it. Because the federal government won't allow it.
But that's the focus that needs to be happening right now. And like I said, but we won't get into the debate about my personal feelings or your feelings as well. But I do say,
but the lines, I just want to say the lines, right? But the lines are caused by bad planning. I do 1,200 people a day at my store, and I have no lines. Only time I had lines is when we were shut down for COVID. We had to do curbside, and it was chaos. I put 1,200 people a day through my store, and we never have a line. So it's just bad business people, and cities not vetting the right partners for these cannabis businesses.
Well, I will say you're a marketing genius when it comes to getting your marketing out there. And of course, your relationship and your understanding of how the media works, I'm sure has helped play into your success as well.
Immensely.
Hey, Gerry, anything I didn't ask before I let you go that
I just want to make sure
share with the public?
I want to make sure people, understand fully that I'm not just some money grubbing freak that sells weed, because that's what, because everybody brings up the money. Listen, I started this 16 years ago as a business, and I learned there are true patients. I see hundreds of sick and dying people every day that make me cry in my store every day. I had a woman come in the other day, tell me she was on 17 opiates. Now she's on 5. So it works as a medicine. I have been, always will be here for the patients. Is it nice to have recreational? Absolutely. But first and foremost, I work with the patients. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend 16 years trying to make this legal.
Yeah, I will say I watched a Real Sports episode with some of the previous football players that were talking about how they can't use weed for pain management, but the doctors can pump them full of opioids, which then lead to addictions. It's
Talk
a
to Calvin
fascinating
Johnson,
story.
talk to Darren McCarty. They're all, all the pro. Listen, even when I was at Channel 50, do you know how many pro athletes smoked weed? I mean, I was friends with all the Lions. I'd hang out with the Pistons. They all smoked weed. They still do. This is a big joke. It's a farce. Pull the cover back. Everybody's using weed. A lot of sports leagues now are taking weed off their banned substance list because they all know they use it. Baseball players have been using it forever. My buddy was a pitcher in major leagues, and they knew when they would get tested. It's a joke, I mean, last year I paid $2.1 million in federal taxes, and I'm considered a drug trafficker. I think that'll change real quick when they realize how much money the federal government's going to make.
Well, Gerry, we'll leave you on that, but we so appreciate the conversation. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ronnie. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Great to virtually meet you.
Right. Nice meeting you too, Ronnie. Thanks.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. Still a lot to get to when we continue.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs, even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary. We've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Perry tested positive for COVID-19. Emma was exposed to a friend who's positive. Willa's waiting on test results. After any contact with COVID-19, or if you test positive, stay home for at least 10 days. If you live with others, keep your distance and wear a mask. Help Michigan contain COVID-19. Visit michigan.gov/contain-COVID.
Join us here on the Megacast, and this show is dedicated to the COVID-19 crisis as we continue to navigate it. And the virus has especially hit Michigan's prisons hard. More than 23,700 inmates have tested positive. More than 127 have died, but also among those numbers are members of the staff as well. With us now is Chris Gotez. He's the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections. Chris, thank you for being with us here on the Megacast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If we could start out by extending our condolences. I know a member of your staff, one of the corrections officer, was also one of the latest to pass away from COVID-19. He was a father of four. Mata, was it Romero Mata, who was with the Department of Corrections? And they're not just numbers, they're people. And it has to hit you and members of your staff pretty hard every day.
You're right, it does. You know, our hearts go out to the family, to all of the individuals who worked with that officer over the years. It really does affect people very difficult. It's been a very difficult time. And then when it hits home into someone that you've been working with for years, all of a sudden is no longer there. It affects not only the staff, but also the prisoners who have gotten to know some of these staff over the years as well, because they're losing people also. It's going to be a difficult time overall, which is why we're very proud of the fact that we established a wellness unit for our employees several years ago, and they've been a real source of help and assistance to our staff, especially during COVID, where it's a team of mental health professionals that can reach out and talk to staff and help them through some of these times.
But Chris, what is being done? Some are going to argue that enough is not being done to try to diminish the spread of COVID-19 within the prisons. But yet, on the backside of this, you are a prison. And how do you separate prisoners and individuals?
So we've been doing a lot. We've been very proactive from the very beginning. And we've talked about this before when I've been on, about all the steps that we've taken to mitigate the fact that we're the only state in the country that's doing this level of testing amongst our prisoners and our staff. You know, since early last fall, we began testing every single prisoner, every employee that works in our prisons every week. We've done more than 500,000 tests over the course of the pandemic, which accounts for about 5% of all the testing that's been done in the entire state. So we're testing every week. We're finding out where there's positives. We're trying to identify those individuals, separate them, quarantine them, do everything we can to keep people safe.
We can't seem to stop the spread in our communities. So I can't imagine the job that you and others within the Michigan Department of Corrections that you're up against right now. It's not an easy task. But on top of that, testing seems to or the issues with testing seems to be getting a little bit more under control, because in the beginning you couldn't even get a test. And there's still an issue of accuracy of tests. But now that we have enough tests, can we shift the focus of our conversation today on the vaccine? What is the status of being able to vaccinate members of the staff, but also the prisoners as well?
Sure. So the state health department put together their phased plan, which obviously now I'm sure everyone has seen, and our staff fall towards the front of that phase. So our healthcare workers that work inside of our prisons come first, according to the state health department's plan, and we have 28 prisons stretched across 19 different counties, and so we had to work with 19 different county health departments to coordinate how we were going to be able to supply the vaccine not only to the prisoners but also to our staff. So right now, all of those county health departments have gotten at least to the phase where our healthcare employees at our facilities have been able to be vaccinated. And now the next step is we're waiting for some of those counties to get to the point where they can offer it to the general portion of our employees that work inside of our facilities. Some are already doing that. Some are on the cusp of doing that. And we're really excited to get that started. And then on the prisoner front, we've made our request for the vaccines. And right now we're expecting, and our fingers are crossed, that the first shipment of vaccine for prisoners is going to arrive next week. We've been doing a ton of work for the last few weeks, if not months, to get prepared for that, get our providers in place, learn how to do the injections, have the refrigeration, all the testing that needs to happen on the back end, so that as soon as we receive the vaccines, we can start putting shots in arms. We've identified all the prisoners who are over the age of 65 and have them take a survey so that we know exactly who they are and if they want it once it arrives. And so once we get those, we're very confident that hopefully next week shots will start going in arms.
So you mentioned the refrigeration. So you've been able to purchase those refrigerators that keep the Pfizer vaccine at that super cold temperature needed?
So those are some of the discussions that we've been having, making sure that we're getting, because some need the refrigeration, some don't. There's a lot of particulars involved in that. So all that's being handled right now, making sure that we're ready to go once the shipments arrive.
There are so many different angles to this story as well, because there are people in the general public who say, hey, we can't even get it yet. Why should we be giving it to our prisoners? Your response to that?
Sure. I would say that, obviously this is a congregate setting. And so our staff, and the prisoners live and work in a congregate setting where it can be very difficult to control that spread. And so when our staff are going in, eventually they come out, they go home, they go to local grocery stores, they go out into the community, they go to church, their kids go to schools, they're caring for elderly parents. This is a crucial way to help stop the spread in the community by being able to vaccinate not only the prisoners, but those employees, so that when they go home and when they go out to their communities, they're not at risk of spreading it further out into the state.
With that, Chris, can you tell us what is the procedure for some of the inmates as they're about to be released? Do they have to be tested prior to their release to make sure they're COVID negative?
They do. We do a rapid test, usually within 48 hours or so before they're to be released, to make sure that we know their status before they're released.
But with that, we also know the rapid tests aren't always accurate. Have you heard of any cases where you released an inmate and then they turned out to be positive?
Not to my knowledge, again, because we're also doing weekly testing, PCR testing, which is very accurate. We have confidence. It's just sort of an extra level of assurance that we're not releasing someone, especially if they're going to a congregate setting like a halfway house or a hotel or something, if they don't have family that's going to take them in. And if they do test positive on that, we do hold them back, because we're not going to introduce someone who's potentially positive into a halfway house or something like that. Now, if they're going home, if they're going to their spouse or to their parents or to a friend that they're going to live with, they can be released. But obviously, we make sure that individual knows what their situation is, and they can certainly make a determination whether or not they still want them to come there, and we can work that out. But yeah, we do testing every week, and then also right before they walk out the door.
It's great to hear that because we're 10 months into this and so many things are changing on a day-to-day basis, but we do have to understand just what you said, that they're being released back into the public. And so in order to keep us safe, we need to keep them safe as well. But with that, can you tell us a little bit more about what is the procedure if you identify an outbreak in one of your prisons? Because we've had several through the past 10 months, which really was inevitable, right? It was going to happen.
Yeah, so when we declare an outbreak, obviously that really what that means is we're going to slow everything down. We're not going to have prisoners from various housing units going into the programs building to go to class. Think of it like a college campus. If you have students or prisoners from various residential halls all have positive cases, we're not going to then send them into a classroom and then have them go back and then potentially spread it further back to their resident units or their dorms. So that's kind of the same thing with prison. So right now we slow everything down. We cohort movement by their housing unit, so that way they're staying together with their group. They're not going out onto the yard and playing basketball or lifting weights with prisoners from across the whole facility. They're going to stay with their one unit. They're going to go to chow together. They're going to get their meds together. They're going to do all those kind of things together as a group so that we don't have spread. And then we also try to make sure that we, as best we can, limit staff movement in those units so that we don't have spread and people moving it from place to place. And so there's a lot of thought and care that goes into this so that we can try to do everything we can to limit spread wherever possible.
And with that as well, Chris, I will say, what is the status of visits for your inmates? Are they being allowed right now in person? And if not, when do you anticipate that returning?
So back on March 13th of last year, we had to suspend in-person visits because of the risk of introduction into the facility by individuals to protect not only them, but also our staff and the prisoners. And we want to get back to that, and our plan is to get back to that this year. We don't have a time and date set in place right now because, again, it's not safe right now. But we want to get there, and we will get there. So in the interim, what we've done, even before we had to suspend visits, our director worked with our companies that provide our email communication and our phone calls for prisoners and worked it out with them so that they can provide some free phone calls, some free electronic stamps every week so that they have some free access to communicate. And then we also went the extra step and started video visits. We did a pilot where we had about a half dozen facilities for the last few months have been doing a pilot with video visits. And we just announced in the last few days that we're going to be rolling that out statewide. And so within the next month and a half, all of our facilities should be up and running and having video visits, which costs the same as it does a regular phone call. And so we're really excited to get that going. And those will stay in place even once we get back to in-person visits, because sometimes it's easier if you live in Detroit, but your loved one is in Marquette or up in the UP, to be able to do that video visit. So you can still have that family connection. But then once we have in-person visits, if they want to make that trek, they can certainly still do that.
And we always say there are some positives, I think, that are going to come out of the pandemic for so many organizations that maybe wouldn't have happened before. And this could be one of them. But with that, the cost even for a regular phone call in the prison system can be pretty pricey. What is the cost for some of these visits?
Right now, it's around 17 cents per minute. And that's a great reduction from what it was a few years ago. We really worked with our provider and we said to them, because we started seeing stories and we heard from our advocates and family advocates saying that the costs were just too high. And so we almost shrunk that cost by half because we went to the provider and said, look, we want you to keep this contract, but to do that, you're going to provide us all the things that you're already providing us, and you're going to lower that rate for families down to this, which again is around 17 cents per minute. And they did that. And that was a great relief. It saved millions of dollars for families around the state to be able to who call in and want to talk to their loved ones. So that was really important for us to bring those costs down. And then on top of that, to ask them to provide free phone calls several times a week for the prisoners as well.
And that's good to know. With that, I don't know if a lot of people will even remember back in the day, like when you had, like we still have a house phone, but back in the day with long distance calling and all of that. So that's about what the rate was back then. But with that, Chris, what is the status? At the beginning of the pandemic, we heard a lot about releasing nonviolent offenders to help stop the spread within the prison system. What is the status of that right now within the Michigan state prison system?
Yeah, so there's a lot of misnomers around that. So I'm glad you asked that. And so last year, we obviously just wrapped up 2020. And last year, we released more than 8,000 prisoners, which is about on par with what we've done in years past. And so some may wonder, well, why didn't you release more? And that's because since Director Washington has been in place since 2015, our prison population in Michigan has been reduced by 21%. And at the same time, we hit our all-time historic low in terms of recidivism at 26.7%. So we're releasing thousands and thousands of prisoners every year, and far fewer of them are coming back. So we had fewer people coming to prison, and then we're also fewer people are coming back. And so the numbers of people that are in for nonviolent offenses is incredibly low. We just ran the numbers the other day. We looked at individuals who were in low security housing, who are in for small drug or non-assaultive offenses, and who are past their earliest release date. There were 61 people out of a population of 33,000 who fit that category. So when people say just release all the nonviolent people, it's a very, very small number. And again, about 85% of our prisoner population, again, which is about 33,000 individuals, are not eligible for parole yet because they've not served their minimum sentence. So we don't have any ability to release them under the law. And so of those that are eligible for parole, about 2/3 of those are serving for assaultive offenses, sex crimes, or homicide. And so, again, the number of people that we have the ability to parole is very small. And then inside of that pie, those who are in for drug offenses or non-assaultive offenses is only about 1/3 of that. So it's a very small number. Everyone who is eligible for parole right now in the Michigan prison system has been considered by the board, and everyone who's still in prison that's eligible for parole is someone who the board has looked at and deemed that they're not able to release in terms of public safety right now. But we're working hard on those individual cases, making sure they get that programming so that they can be released when it's safe to do so.
You know, Chris, it's great having you on the show, and I so appreciate your explanation and your full explanation of so many of these things and the issues that we see behind the headlines. Anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to share before we let you go?
No, I think you covered it all. Again, we're just really excited to get vaccines going, to get in-person visits going at some point this year when it's safe, but also obviously video visits rolling out statewide. And again, just reminding people that maybe they hear those numbers. There are some who are going to hear those numbers and say, that's great, but you should let more people out. There's also, we know, going to be people who say, why are you letting so many people out? And again, for that segment of the population, I think it's important to remind them that our standards of parole have not changed during this pandemic. Again, every individual that's looked at is reviewed in person with an interview, and then a review of their case and what they come to the table with, and then a decision is made based on evidence. And that's why we've been able to release so many, and again, keep our recidivism rate at an all-time low in state history.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, just about 15 minutes left here in the show. And when we return, we'll be talking about dermatology during the pandemic. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Yes, As a reminder, here on the Oakland County Megacast, Tyler and I are here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. You can always catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Tune us in to Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T, or if you're out driving around, turn your radio dial to 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. We also want to say thank you to the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to live stream today's edition of the Megacast on their Facebook page. Just about 10 minutes or so left here on the Megacast, and we'd like to round out this show by bringing in Dr. Emily Levin with us. She's with the Northwest Dermatology Group. Thank you for being with us. And I have to say, I made my appointment for my Botox. I'm putting it out there. I've been getting Botox since my 20s. It's no big secret. But it was like weeks away, and I was really surprised. So what is the status of the dermatology world right now? Are people comfortable coming in? Because it's not an industry where you can actually be socially distant.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Ronnie. And that's a great question. It's interesting because people, despite the pandemic, are really coming in for all of their skin conditions. We have people coming in for their skin cancer screenings still. We have people coming in for cosmetic procedures. We have people coming in for rashes. I mean, I think, we've proven that we've been very safe in my office with the mask wearing and the cleaning and all the screening and cleaning protocols, and people have felt that comfort. And, interestingly, as you brought up the Botox part, everybody's wearing masks and they're not seeing the lower part of their face, but all of a sudden they're noticing the upper part of their face. So we're getting a boom of people coming in for Botox, actually.
I was like, how many weeks out? Really, I need it now,
But people in quickly, Ronnie, I'll tell you, we do, because when you need it, you need it. And we understand that for anything, for changing moles, for rashes, and even for Botox.
But that also makes me wonder about how many people are still uncomfortable, because it's not an industry where you can wear a mask. I have to take my mask off for certain procedures and certain issues. And if you have a bump, it's not a good time to ignore that. You want to continue to go see your doctors, I would imagine, because if they delay, it could be a delay in treatment as well.
Absolutely. So what we're doing is we're actually having patients come in, even if they have rashes or issues on their skin under the mask, which is actually very common these days because the mask is causing issues. We have people wear their mask, their shields, or their eye protection, as our entire staff are doing as well, up until the point when I'm in the exam room and I'm examining that portion of their skin. We very briefly have them lower the mask. We look around probably within 5 to 10 seconds, and then they can put their mask back up. All the meanwhile, any staff members in the room are completely protected with our PPE as well. So we're able to still view those areas, see what we're dealing with when it comes to the rashes or the bump. If it's a cancerous mole that needs to be removed, we often will have them adjust their mask so it's just covering portion of their nose and mouth, and they'll hold it in place while we're doing what we need to do if it's a biopsy or any other type of evaluation.
So, Dr. Emily, also, when should a person know if they have like a new rash or new bumps and they are wearing a mask all of the time? When should they know versus just ignoring it and thinking it will go away when they don't have to wear a mask again, and when they need to actually go see a dermatologist?
My general rule of thumb is if something is there, if it comes and goes in a month, it's probably nothing to worry about. If it's lingering and you think it's a pimple, but it's been 6-8 weeks, that's something more is going on. So at that point, if it's been over a month, it's time to go see a board certified dermatologist.
And does that apply for people who are over the age of the typical pimple period in their life?
Oh, absolutely, Ronnie. Any age. I mean, I'm 46. I'm still getting some pimples under my mask, and my 75-year-old mother still does occasionally. So any age, any skin conditions can happen. Acne can occur in adult women and adult men. So, and at any age, if there is a lesion not going away after a month or so, absolutely they should come in.
But what is the difference though when we're wearing a mask and we start to get these rashes? Is it what causes it? Or can you change the type of mask that you're wearing if you're able to? We know healthcare workers have to be very specific in what they wear, but if I maybe work at a grocery store and I have to wear it for 8-9 hours, is there a difference in the mask that they can wear to try to help eliminate some of the issues that you're seeing?
Great question. Obviously, you want to wear the most protective mask that you can in any industry where you're in contact with other people. But if you can put a cotton mask even underneath some of those thicker N95 or medical masks, that cotton touching your skin is much more breathable and has more absorption. So it really does help with the sweat and the oil and greases that can build up underneath the masks. It's also really important, Ronnie, to clean the masks. I usually will take an antibacterial wipe if I have a moment and just wipe out the inside of my mask. If you have cotton masks, you can wash them, obviously by hand or in a washing machine. But it is critical to wash the masks, not wear them days on end without cleaning them.
It's so hot. I will say, because I laugh, because I'm a big advocate, or not, just a big user. I know they're saying you shouldn't use them so much anymore, of just the face gaiters, because I can pull them up and pull them down. And it makes it easier for me to remember to have them with me. But I do see them constantly hanging from rear view mirrors and people dropping them on the ground, walking into the park, the grocery store, picking it up, putting it back on their face. And I'm thinking, isn't that contaminated? Shouldn't you use a different mask?
Absolutely.
What would you say to us?
Yes.
I'm included in that group, by the way.
First of all, that's a driving hazard too. When I see them hanging from the rearview mirrors, that's the first thing. But no, I always keep disposable masks in my car so that if I drop my cotton mask or, a neck gaiter, which are not quite as protective as some of the more protective, sealing masks, but I always keep extra either cotton masks or just those disposable masks in my car for any time that I were to drop something on the ground or it's become contaminated or just I've been wearing it for a few days and I realized I haven't cleaned it.
Are there any over-the-counter products out there that you maybe recommend to help some of the people that are having some issues from having to wear a face mask all the time, or also just from being indoors all the time, more so than what we would be outdoors in normal times outside of the pandemic?
Absolutely. So there's a few things that we need to do under our masks. If our skin is dry, it's going to get worse under the mask. If its skin tends to be oily, that's going to get worse under the mask. That mask exacerbates whatever type of skin that we already have. So if you have dry skin, you want to moisturize and hydrate. If you have oily skin, you want to use products that are meant to absorb the oil, like acne-prone skin products. Over the counter, they make some. Again, a board certified dermatologist can prescribe some if you're developing acne or rashes. But irritation, Ronnie, is one of the biggest things that we see where the nose pads lie, dry lips and irritated lips and noses. So Aquaphor healing ointment is one of my favorite things on the market. I use it for everything, everywhere. My kids make fun of me. Every little scratch, bruise, cut, dry lip, dry nose, Aquaphor goes on it. It's a great product for lubrication and creating that barrier so you're not getting so much irritation around where the mask seal is touching your face.
Dr. Emily Levin with us here on the Megacast. It's so great to talk with you, but just another minute or so before we let you go, can we talk a little bit more about your expansion? What's going on? And I'm like, you're expanding during this time, but fill us in with your plans.
Yes, no, thanks, Ronnie. No, this has just been such a trying but interesting time for our practice. We have had such a support from the community, even during this worrisome time with this pandemic. We have had people giving great word of mouth and social media reviews for us and, really recognizing how safe we're being, and then our warm, compassionate care. We have a philosophy where we treat everybody the way we would want to be treated in a doctor's office and in life in general. And that has led to such a community support. And we thank our community for supporting us so much so that we're actually growing during this pandemic. We've hired some new providers, new physicians, new physician assistants, estheticians, because the cosmetic market is growing and there's been such a high demand. So we are moving actually to a larger facility, a state-of-the-art facility around the corner from where we currently are. And we're really excited about this. We are planning to expand and give better access to dermatology appointments, both obviously cosmetic, surgical, skin cancer screenings, all of those things, so that people like you don't have to say, it's taking me weeks to get in to see my dermatologist. That is why we are expanding. So we really
want people not to delay their need for help. 10 seconds, your location.
Our location currently is in Southfield on Northwestern Highway. We are moving to Bingham Farms right around the corner on Telegraph Road in May of 2020.
Well, Dr. Emily, it's great to have you with us. We so appreciate your time.
Great being here. Thank you for having me.
It's so important to look good, at least from the head up, right?
Right. Well, you don't see my pajamas on the bottom. I'm just teasing. But it really is. That's what we're here for.
No, I'm in my sweatpants and my Uggs right now.
Me too, Ronnie. Me too. But we all look good, face and neck up. We are there to help for those reasons, but really all over skin in general. Skin health is our main priority.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast.